me tell you a little bit of their stories, and maybe you'll find a common denominator. Steve Jobs was born out of wedlock. The couple that intended to adopt him didn't want a boy, so another couple got a phone call during the middle of the night. And after they promised the birth mother that they would send the boy to college, they were granted parental rights. Babe Ruth was the oldest of 8 children. His parents surrendered him to a monastery because they thought the 7-year-old rambunctious child needed a more strict environment. Marilyn Monroe, well, she lived in 11 different foster homes after her mother was put in a mental institution. She finally landed in the home of a family friend. Dave Thomas, he was adopted when he was 6 weeks old. His mother then died when he was 5, and he was left to be raised by his grandmother. Jesse Jackson was born to a 16-year-old and a married man next door. His mother later married a year later, and he got the Jackson name. Mary King, she was adopted when she was 6 weeks old by a woman who came to Alaska as a missionary for just one summer. So, what do all these people have in common? They were orphans. When you hear the word orphans, what's the first image that comes to your mind? Do you see abandoned, hungry, starving children somewhere in Africa, Latin America, or Ethiopia? It would be surprising if that's the first image that comes to your mind because, see, we live in a rich country like the United States, and we don't see those images every day. But if the truth were told, and it is going to be told today, every orphan has a story. And while the stories you just heard about these American orphans had very happy endings, such is not the case for many of Americans' orphans today. So let's talk about America's tragic story. How many orphans are there in the United States? According to, and I've got my notes out of order, that's going to go great. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Resources, there are 123,000 orphans in the United States right now. They're in foster care. They are there because they've been neglected or abused or abandoned, and they are actually eligible to be adopted into new homes. But don't let that number fool you. There are more than 123,000 children in foster care. That's just the ones that are eligible to be adopted. There are actually 436,000, almost 4 times that number, in foster care right now. AFCARS, which is the Adoption and Foster Care Analyst and Reporting Service, they report that last year, or as it goes, half of foster children are usually reunited with their parents, usually go back to their parents. But whether the outcome is that they are placed in an adoptive home or whether they get to return to their families, they usually spend about 31 months in the system. That's almost 3 years. And for 20% of those kids, most of them spend 5 years in the system. The average foster child has to switch homes about 3 different times, but it's not uncommon to hear about a foster child who has been into 20 to 30 different foster homes. Ray and I were foster parents at one time. We had a little boy come to our home. He was so cute. He was 3 years old. He had been put in the system at 2, and we were his 3rd foster home. That meant he was moved around almost every 6 months, if not more often. In 2011, nearly 60,000 children in foster homes were not even placed in traditional foster homes. They were put in institutes or group homes. That same year, the State Department reported that Americans adopted 9,000 kids. But they didn't adopt them from here, mostly. They went to China for them. They went to the Ukraine. They went to Russia. They went to South Korea. Kind of a sad mindset that we have all these orphans right in our own backyards, and yet we leave the country to go adopt someone else's children. These statistics and facts don't write for very happy endings to tragic stories. So I'm proposing that we help rewrite the story. And these are some of the things that I propose that we do. One of the things that we can start doing right away is being very intentional about how we support. We can support fundraisers to help adoptive families adopt children, raise the funds that they need. We can put our money where our mouth is and add a budget line. I know Tom would appreciate that, wouldn't you, Tom?
Sure.
We could add a budget line. We could add benevolence, foster care to our benevolence line and help foster care parents. I don't know who John Wesley was actually talking to or who his audience was the day that he delivered this comment, but see what you gain from it. This is what John Wesley had to say. Do you not know that God entrusted you with that money, all above what buys necessities for your family, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to help the stranger, the widow, the fatherless, and indeed as far as it will go, to relieve the wants of all mankind? How can you, how dare you defraud the Lord by applying it to any other purpose? Pretty strong statement, but when you think about it, what does the Bible ask us to do about the fatherless and the widows? Another thing that I propose that we might be able to do in order to change these tragic stories into happy endings is to intentionally raise awareness. There are a multitude of resources out there about orphans and fostering and sponsorship programs, but here's one that's very, very good that organizes everything into one little spot, and it's called Orphans Sunday. While attending a church service in Zambia, an American visitor was very struck by a pastor's passionate call to his community to help the orphans. They had been ravaged by AIDS and poverty, and so he wanted to do something for them. The church members of that very little congregation were in deep need themselves, but as the service ended, the visitor noticed that one by one they came to the front to try to help. They brought money, they brought food, they brought goods. They even took off their own shoes and put them in the offering to help the orphans. This visitor's name was Gary Schneider, and he was so impacted by what he saw them doing that he began to help the Zambian leaders to coordinate what he called Orphan Sunday to raise awareness and to help in Zambia those orphans. The effort spread to the United States in 2003, and with help from an organization here called Every Orphan's Hope. Now they hold and highlight every year an event called Orphan Sunday, a national event that any church that wants to get involved in can participate in. They organize everything together in one neat package so that the churches can present it to their congregations and share information just about those things. How to sponsor a child, how to foster a child, how to go into adopting. We could even multiply our own efforts here at Longview Heights simply by using our Faith at Home Center after we would have an Orphan Sunday event, because we have such a great place to resource and share information with others about these same items. In the words of Max Lucado, who said, "No one can do everything, but everyone can do something." This is just one way we can begin to equip our church to help meet the needs of orphans. And one of the last things that I might propose that we could do would be to round out all our actions by intentionally praying. Anyone who's ever read the biography of George Mueller comes away astounded at what that man was able to accomplish on behalf of orphans. Now, if you're not familiar with George Mueller, he was a Christian evangelist, and he was the director of Ashley Down Orphanage in Bristol, England. He took care of over 10,000 orphans in his lifetime. He educated children. He started 117 different schools in which he educated over 20,000 children, and most of those were orphans. And how did he do it all? On his knees in prayer. He accomplished that through praying. He was even accused of raising poor people above their natural station in life. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could be accused of raising someone above their natural station in life? Unlike our American celebrities and our friends that we shared their stories with earlier, there are lots of other people still waiting for the last chapters of their stories to be written. Through intentional giving, through raising awareness, and through intentionally praying, we as Christians can change story endings. We can edit their stories and make a new ending. We even really have that responsibility. Jim Daly, president of Focus on the Family, was also an orphan. His father was never on the scene. His mother died when he was 9 years old, and his adoptive father ran off. So people often ask him why Focus on the Family has taken such a supportive stand for orphans through their I Care About Orphans campaign. Daly's answer is simple. James 1:27. Religion that our God accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. He continues, if there are approximately 123,000 orphans in the United States, and there are 300,000 churches, that's less than one child per church. If each church would only champion the cause of just one orphan, we could in fact